We're finishing with the site called Roca del Valle near Barcelona, where there was the megalithic route exactly on the Paris meridian. And this particular stone is called the Stone of Swallows. And I found it very fascinating because I made an inset to show you what the pictograph was. It's very faded now, but it was dancing women, dancing red women and red serpents. This is more the original. And again, at that time of the eclipse that I visited this site, I found an amazing piece on the Selknam traditions of the tip of South America, written by Anne McKay Chapman. And she did a lot of research collecting the women's traditions of the Selknam culture. She said, the shaman, Sho'on, knew from his dreams when the moon would eclipse, and the women painted their bodies with red clay, their faces with bands of white clay from the nose to the ears, the ground, and chanted to appease the fury of the moon. Where are the women who sang like the canaries? There were many women. Where are they now? Time to go north for the third fire. And of course, there was a synchronicity again with the name of the mountain, Cardu. It was Cardo. Well, it's the French flowering of the language as they do with the basic Latin term Cardo, which means north-south meridian. And it's sitting right on the north-south meridian. The cultures were working with these meridians long before they were measured in the 1600s by the scientists at the Paris Observatory. The ancient sites were built on the meridians. Henry Lincoln, the great late author and actor, he called it a cromlech intersect. A cromlech is a stone circle, and an intersect is where it intersects with an ancient alignment or pathway. So I headed north. Actually, I lived there right below the mountain, a village called Rennes-les-Bains. And the most likely site that popped up was the Fountain of Lovers. I know some of you have been there together with me. And it has a wonderful serpent dragon carved in the stone. So it was another good fit. It wasn't exactly on the meridian, just off maybe a kilometer or so. But I discovered a very interesting alchemical text written in the 1600s or 1500s. And a portion of it speaks about a dragon mounting into the air, created actually out of the alchemy of the salt. This is a salt river fed by a pure salt spring just up the valley. Now, salt is used in alchemy, transformation, healing, purification. So this alchemical text spoke about a dragon that was created out of the salty waters. She who is called nature, the earth within, without, within, and in the middle. I lit a fire there, but it wasn't exactly on the meridian. So as you can see, it's a process that went on. Here's the village of Rennes-les-Bains with the artist's conception of the cromlech. Some are natural stones, some are worked stones, and some are menhirs. And we can see here, there's a site right on the Paris meridian called Cougoulou Levant. And I remembered going there years ago with a friend. This site here, Cougoulou Levant, and it's marked on the meridian. Exactly at 20 degrees, 20 minutes, exactly on the Paris meridian. North, south. And what's extraordinary about these two circles, it is a smaller circle and then a larger circle below with a passageway carved so that the water in this circle flows into the female here. Now, what's interesting is my same friend Kai, who is an author of books on alignments, he said that this upper circle relates to the same proportion of size of Mars to Venus. So it was an ancient fertility site, obviously. So this was the final site of the third fire. And lo and behold, the measurement was exactly identical. I think it's 45.4 miles from the center of the cross to the southern stones. There is perfection in this symmetry of the landscape temple. So this is one of the points of Henry Lincoln's pentagram that he discovered in the landscape of Venus temple, Venus being the only planet to make a perfect five-pointed star every 8 years. And lo and behold, the point ends on the Paris meridian, Cougoulou Levant, and a solar temple right above it. Throne of Isis, we call it that. It used to be called the Devil's Armchair, but it turns out that it's not arbitrary at all because there's an alignment from the altar at the Church of Mary Magdalene in Rennes-le-Château, right through the Throne of Isis, right through Cougoulou Levant, to the Sirius rising point on the horizon. And here we have an image of the throne, which is ancient and then later embellished. It's a powerful sight. Fire number 4. This is an interesting one. So things were creating a perfect symmetry, and I needed to head to this western arm to see what I might find. There was a wonderful white ridge, spiny ridge that stood out. If one looks on Google Earth, it's called the Kadi mountain range. It's a beautiful white ridge standing out in otherwise green sort of valleys, just right south of the Pyrenees. So I headed to a place called Cabo, which measured exactly the same distance as this right arm in the east to the west. And I found a remote chapel in the hills in the Valley of Toast. Toast was named for a famous knight, Amir de Toast, who was kind of the El Cid of northern Spain. He defeated the Muslim invaders and he built castles everywhere. So this is one of his churches near one of his castles. And lo and behold, inside this church was, it's now in the Vic Museum to the south, this wonderful four-pointed cross within a four-pointed cross. Perfect fit. We have the double crosses at the western end of the cross. But again, there was a refinement that occurred after I would visit these sites. Now, I found a megalithic route quite near to Toast, which we'll go into in a minute. But first, I have to share with you a dream I had in the process of lighting this fire. I came back home and I had what seemed like an epic adventure, like a Star Wars film. I was coming from some galaxy way out there with a team, and we were working as one unified force. We had a mission, and we had come to Earth. It could have been hundreds of thousands of years ago. I don't know. We came to lay an invisible cross, an energetic cross across the Pyrenees. And I was part of the team burying the cross, and it was kind of smallish and made of translucent material. And then our intention was for it to grow, that it would prepare the region to create stability, harmony, coherence for the migrations that would be arriving after the great changes. Now, Edgar Cayce talks about, these changes of when Atlantis went down, he channeled that a lot of the migrants went to Egypt and some went to the Pyrenees. So that was another fit. I had a second part of the dream a few days later, and I was told that over time, the cross, the left arm of the cross, the western arm, had been manipulated in a negative way and disturbed. Here's the area. So we see the Chapel Saint-Martin of Toast, and then over here, a megalithic route. Now this is a dinosaur zone. There are even dinosaur footprints. Another beautiful fit. The Dragon Ridge up here. So I needed to head to the Dolmens, and I contacted my friend Juan Saez, who's written a wonderful book called Lugares de Poder, or Places of Power. It's just in Spanish, but an excellent book on megalithic sites throughout Spain, northern Spain mainly. And by the time it came time for our trip, it was COVID shutdown. Everything, borders between, I was in France, he was in Spain, and the border was absolutely shut. Everybody said, "You're crazy, you're not going to get anywhere," And, but I contacted the Catalan government and got permission, said I was doing archaeological research. So I had a stack of papers, drove through the border, no one was there, especially at lunchtime, because the Spanish are very religious about lunch, right? So you want to go through the border if it's shut at lunchtime. And so Juan and I headed, well, this is the other part. That morning that I left, excuse me, it was the 100-year, oh dear. Okay, there we go. It was the 100-year snowstorm across northern Spain. The roads were icy. Driving past Montserrat, it was like a white island within a white sea. It was incredibly beautiful. No one was on the roads because of COVID, because of the ice storm and snow. But we went anyway. I think it was Mother Teresa said, "Do it anyway," right? And when things like that happen, you usually notice that it's a very auspicious sign because it means there's something important stirring. So this is the beginning of the trailhead, and all we saw on the way were animal tracks. We're the only crazy ones, and it was hurricane force winds because the storm was blowing out. And this was our first destination, a dolmen called Del Serrat Malpas. Now this is one of about 9 dolmens of the series there. And because there were megalithic sites at each arm of the cross, it was very important to light a fire here as well. Here is Juan serenading the stones. Every time I traveled to these sites, I had a small travel harp and a little dragon ocarina flute. And We would douse the sites when we arrived to get a baseline measurement and mark that, and then measure again after we had worked with the stones, played music, made our offerings, sung to the stones, whatever it was, making a deep contact. And normally the dowsing showed an increase of the energy field of doubled, tripled, or quadrupled. So what's happening is there's more vital force available for these stones that are all connected in a matrix across the land. So when you have them energized and happy, they love music. Dragons love music. I feel it's the food of dragons. It's the food of stars. When we energize these sites, we energize the entire matrix so that it gives vitality to the people and all living things and the earth itself. Also, of course, each of these sites is aligned with stars. Solar, lunar, and star alignments. There are many stories to tell. Have to get the book for the rest. This was one of the, now it was interesting, the manipulation of the site on the western arm became clear when Juan pointed out that there were major electric towers going right past a couple of the dolmens, which were disturbing the electromagnetic field. The other thing that happened is this dolmen called Boixadeira, crazy-making place. It made a crazy assortment of orbs. And I think it was upset because he was able to verify that it had been moved. There were a couple of dolmens that had been moved and repositioned, which messed up the grid. So we did the work, we completed it, lots of music, and places felt much, much better. Now, there was a fifth fire at the center. It was a journey finding where this place was, because when I looked on Google Earth, all that I could find was a farmhouse in the middle of the Pyrenees. So I headed to the Vic Museum, which is just north of Barcelona, that has a collection of at least 18 Mary Magdalene images. It's a small museum, but it's full of Magdalena. And in one of the retables, the six-sectioned altar painting done by 15th century Bernat Martorell, it showed the death scene of Mary Magdalene. The retable was all of the 6 portions of her lifetime with Yeshua and showing the various things. And this is the last scene. Whoops, sorry. We went forward. This is the last scene, and Yeshua, it looks like he's performing the opening of the mouth ritual on her for her Kaaba to sail to the stars. What was an Egyptian opening the mouth Kaaba ritual, doing in the Pyrenees? I believe that both Yeshua and Magdalena were very aware of the Hermetic and the Egyptian traditions. He had many things that he did, the healings, the resurrections, that indicated their knowledge of these things. So I had to go. Well, first of all, I had to find, where this pareja was, because when I went to the curator at the desk, I said, where is this painting from? Where is pareja? And it turned out it was exactly at the center of the cross, marking the center point, Magdalena. So I headed up another hill. All of the Magdalena sites that I found were all on mountains and hills. And the first time there, I had to walk. because the gate was locked. I didn't know, So walking up and met the owner, ended up being able to play in a future visit. And my first walk there, it was very magical because there were white cows grazing. Here's a copy of the retabla that is sitting in the Vic Museum now. There are many, many, many mysteries in this chapel, but just briefly, what struck me was this fresco, like a wedding chuppah, the wedding tent, right on above the altar. On the floor were multiple X's, the sign of Hermes, as you read, but also wedding, union, sacred union. A tiny, humble little chapel, no fancy stained glass windows. Nobody knows about it, hidden in the Pyrenees, the bridal chamber. Just like the 6th tapestry of the Unicorn and Our Lady from Cluny Museum. Maria Magdalena, thou blessed one, whom I will perfect in all the mysteries of those of the height, discourse, and openness, thou whose heart is raised to the kingdom of heaven more than all thy brethren. From the Pistis Sophia. Now, lo and behold, star alignment right above Perea. On the meridian, she's right on the meridian at the ancient crossroads. These are crossroads established thousands of years ago. And on July 22nd, her feast day, Perea is right above at the zenith, shining down. And from Rabanus, from the Vitae Mariae Magdalene, come, my beloved, and I shall place you on my throne. For the King desires your beauty. Rejoice and exult forever amidst the heavenly choirs. I didn't put all of the Magdalena sites or the Templar sites. This is just a little taste. But you can see how they congregate across these paths. And this site here is called Empúries. It's one of the most successful trade cities, Greek cities, on the Iberian coast. Here we have Venus Aphrodite, Cape of Orpheus, Rhodes, founded by the people coming from the Isle of Rhodes, Greece, and also people arriving from Phocia, which is modern Turkey. So let's go to Empúries. This is a wonderful drone shot from Renwick when we were there together. And this shows the Greek city, and then the Roman city is up above. There's a little village called St. Claus, which means 5 keys, where there was a Templar church and a Templar site, fortification. And I thought, what are the 5 keys? And there are 5 temples in this short diameter of about 1 kilometer apart. Temple to Artemis at the top, coming around to the right, Isis and Serapis, Asclepius Hygeia, Magdalena Church, one of the earliest in all of Spain, 4th century, 370 AD, and right next to the Magdalena, Santa Margarida, which is the Lady of the Dragon. She was born from a dragon. Right in the center, we find a flower of life, which is about 4 to 5 feet diameter. It's part of the old Roman villa, a floor in a Roman villa. There are mosaics of all the geometries here. And here's St. Margaret, who was devoured by a dragon and was birthed out of the belly of the dragon. That tells us that she was birthed out of wisdom, regeneration. Of course, she became the patron goddess of childbirth, and that's all people really think about, but it's much more than that. She came from a pagan hermetic site, and then her chapel here was established very early on. The Artemis Temple, I will just say briefly that the Artemis Temple next to Empúries was very interesting because the Phocians were chased out by the Persians and they came across the Mediterranean. But before they left, they heard a voice that said to find a person, they said a man, chosen by the goddess Artemis of Ephesus to go with them. Lo and behold, Aristarche of Ephesus had a dream in which she saw Artemis standing in front of her, telling her to go with the expedition. So she took a model of the sanctuary or the temple of Ephesus and brought it into Iberia to establish the temple there. And she became a priestess of the temple. And here is a view of the Asclepian Hygeia temple with, you can barely see Asclepius here. And this was a healing sanctuary where it was more about healing the soul, not putting a Band-Aid on various things that occur physically or emotionally or mentally, but healing the soul. The musicians would have been strolling through, and the serpents, who would be the healer allies of Asclepius and Hygeia. And we still see this symbol in almost every pharmacy across Europe, meaning the medicine, the resurrection, the healing. And here we have Hygeia feeding her healing serpent the elixir. And this Orphic hymn to Hygeia became one of the many songs that, when I finished the book, well, basically finished it, I thought I want to create a multimedia aspect of the stories for people to go deeper. So there's a double album of music, and this is one of the songs in it. There's also a lyric book. There is a song map called The Path of Songs, because the journeys became a path of songs. Everywhere I went, I was singing, playing the harp, getting inspiration of music from each deity, each site. And so we created a path of songs so that you can find videos that were shot on location that describe the history of each site, and also the music that occurred at each site. It's a whole kind of multimedia additional thing. There's information in the back of the books and on my website. So in this song, "Oh, come now, blessed goddess, to the seekers of mystic healing. O Hygeia, to the temple of mystic healing. Born from the heart of Asclepius, your serpent's touch brings healing. We drink from your cup of remembering. Come to these seekers of soul dreaming, mystic healing." Here we have the Temple of Isis. What a beautiful setting it must have been when it was radiant with the pillars and sanctuaries. Isis was considered the protectress of the Mediterranean, and when people would depart on their ships, they would pray to her for protection. In the prow of the boat stands Isis, the great enchantress, whose magic none can withstand. Isis, the greatest of goddesses, she who can raise the dead, and to whom all mankind pay love and reverence. With arms outstretched, she recites the words of power. The Way of the Stars. We finally arrive. Here we have Cap de Creus and the beginning, the original beginning of the Camino de Santiago de Compostela. The modern routes go various ways from France and across northern Spain and only touch part of northwestern Spain. But originally, the departure was from the Mediterranean and went across to the Atlantic, following the path of the stars as they rise out of the waters and then die and descend for the evening into the waters of the Atlantic, being born, dying, being reborn constantly. It was a great initiation path, stretching back 6,000 years. Here's our artist's impression of the Way of the Stars, showing the goddess Nut as she appears in the temple of Dendera, Egypt. So she gives birth to the sun at the Mediterranean, at the temple of Venus Aphrodite. And we see Dragonera, Ophiusa. The themes were over and over in the symbols, in the place names. And then her breasts offer that nurturing milk at the end of the Camino, Finisterre, the end of the earth. Hemeroscopion was another Artemis temple. It means watchtower of the morning. And that's where we found the Elche goddess. So the current place that marks the beginning, the easternmost beginning of the Camino, with the typical seashell, which actually originated with Aphrodite. That's Aphrodite's promontory. It's the site of Aphrodite, Venus's temple. Of course, the seashell is reminiscent of that. Now, it later became Saint-Jacques, decoration for his hat. But we go back to the ancient goddess traditions for the origins of things. So this is Saint-Père de Rhodes on the cliffs of Cap de Creus. It's marked with 37 megalithic temples and the original Camino departure. Going back 4,000 BC, it would have been the megalithic star route, including Cobertea. I believe since it was the largest dolmen, that would have been the logical departure. And then later, 900 to 700 BC, the Venus Aphrodite temple, and then from 900 to now, Saint-Père de Rhodes, all located on the Star Ridge. Perfection. So when I was just about finished with the book, last minute discovery by an astrophysicist who had developed a computer program to find alignments in the landscape. Someone told him about my work and he discovered a perfect six-pointed star on the Way of the Stars Camino, marked by Templar sites around, marked by the crosses, with Mary Magdalene sitting again at the center. Many more things to discover, but extraordinary symmetry. Halfway along the Camino to Finisterre, the end of the world, is a pattern of dolmens that are laid out exactly like Cassiopeia. This was discovered by my friend Juan Saez, and it's in his book that I mentioned, Lugares de Poder. Along with Cassiopeia and Magdalena being represented as that star constellation, the Egyptians saw it as Osiris sitting on his iron throne and his skyboat So here we come to the end of the Camino and the Way of the Stars. There is a long story here, but just basically, there are many legends and texts that say that Magdalena not only came to Provence, but she was in Aquitaine. The region of Aquitaine borders on the Bay of Biscay, the Atlantic, and the Pyrenees. It's also said that she was there with Joseph of Arimathea. And my intuition, because there were 22 chapels dedicated to her along the Garonne, this little section of the Garonne River. It was a major navigational trade route. Coming down the coast, Magdalena, there's a ship hanging from the ceiling at this Magdalena church here. All the Grail cups mark Magdalena sites. I didn't have room to put them all on. There are 94 in that little tiny section along the northern Camino. Here's Santiago, Finisterre, and at the end, at Murcia, there is an old tradition of a Mary arriving in a boat. So we just put the pieces together. Nobody talks about this, but still today, these sites dedicated to Mary Magdalene still celebrate with huge festivals on her feast day. At least 4,000 years before Christ, all inter-regional cultic centers in megalithic times were joined in a network. There are 3 great star routes. The first leads through northern Spain. And that's from astronomer Heinz Comiskey. Thank you.
Catalunya, de Catalunya, Magdalena, Apostola, la curandera, quando aparece, viene tanta luz, voces cantando del paraíso. Cuando aparece, viene la fuente y pares cantando, fa sostenido.